I guess my work generally focuses a lot on space and how that painted space interacts with the sort of real space of the gallery that it's installed in. I work at sort of building an interior illusionary space within a painting through a lot of repetition and mark making, and sort of, I guess, your traditional kind of like painting tools like light, like placement of marks, things like that. So I'm really kind of interested in building that space and then contrasting that internal painted space against where the painting is hung, and the sort of, in this case, the contrast between, a lot of it has to do with color, a lot of it has to do with dark, sort of deep colors against a flat white wall, and you get something of an effect of a hole being punched in the wall. But at the same time, they're very reflective, and so it's almost as if once you see this hole punched in the wall, you move, and your reflection jumps back out at you. So I guess that contrast, kind of the way I think about it is, I think of them as windows and mirrors at the same time. So there's a window into that illusionary space and a mirror back into our physical space. So with this body of work, I sort of took that interest in space, sort of general interest in space and light, and I wanted to sort of push it further than I had before. And so these are made they all have about 5 or 6 layers of enamel on aluminum, and it's wet sanded between layers. Like if you went to get your car repaired, that's what they would do. They'd put paint down and sand it, put paint down and sand it. And the paint is very translucent. A single coat of this paint is very light, and the metal almost shines completely through it. So by building up layers of this paint in marks that are made in relationship to the support, you get this depth of color and depth of mark, where you have marks that are overlapping from one layer to the next, and it actually creates like almost like a little perspective drawing inside. But the other thing that layering does is hides those marks. So from a lot of angles, these paintings look like they're a flat sort of spray, and then you move and the light catches the mark sort of differently than the mark behind it, and it sort of like reveals itself quite slowly. So yeah, I was interested in building that space, and also in packing as much space in as possible, which is where the title compression comes from. I feel that these are, each one kind of holds more than its own space, not just sort of in terms of depth, but also in terms of width. They're quite hard to hang next to each other. They need a lot of space between them, because the illusion of having a hole or having a mirror starts to fall apart when they're placed together. And so I guess with compression, I was interested in really maximizing that contrast and maximizing how much space is involved in that contrast. And so I feel like they're generally successful. They're they do hold a lot more space than an 8-inch wide painting should hold. But I also feel that I want to see how much you can put in there, and I feel like there's more that you can put in a smaller space and make it take up a much larger, make it interact with a much larger physical space.